Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about Spirit Chronicles Episode 2. Hey everybody! So, I noticed that this video got a lot of attention last week, or this series review, so I hope this week we get another 1,000 views. Please like the video if you enjoy it. I will try to do my best to give a good review, like always. Anyway, this episode, I thought it was so cute. It was adorable. I didn't think I'd like Celia as much as I do, but it was really adorable. Yeah, it kind of hit me in the right spots. Spirit Chronicles, I think, still isn't really doing anything bad. Again, I think like probably if you're going to criticize the series, your best criticism is saying that it's generic. But even that's like, generic doesn't really matter in the long run because usually Isekais differentiate themselves later on in their runs. So it's not really a fair criticism. If anything, it's still, like on paper, I think it's still relatively solid. Like I think if you're going to question anything, you're probably questioning or criticizing the execution, but that is such a subjective area. I don't think Spirit Chronicle does anything offensively bad. So before we get into any like real points of discussion, let's just go through the quick recap. We have the intro scene which sets up the snooty nobles for the rest of the episode. That was just really worthwhile. We move into the flashback that tells us how Rio got into the school. I thought we were going to just pick up from there, but this is fine too. This kind of stuff is maybe the kind of thing that would say that this is a fast-paced story. Just when you're throwing in like the bare minimum of a scene just to give you the context to a new scene. Yeah, that's usually a sign of a fast story. We have the Celia scene where she yells at Rio and we see her office and we find out she's 12. Now this scene I thought was just really good just because we saw Celia freak out at Rio right when he opened the door, and you know the whole thing about can you read? That was really rude, and I'm actually really happy that the anime showed it just to point out that Celia is not a angel all the time there. It does look a little bit bad though because she's asking the boy that she knows probably can't read if she can read, but then again you remember she's 12, right? There's no reason to expect this girl to have any kind of emotional maturity. Not before she probably hasn't even entered puberty. Like her hormones are in full swing by the end of the episode. So I actually thought that was a really good depiction. I think it was fair overall. We have Rio's arithmetic ability and that tying into his past life. We go into the sword lesson, which serves to show us another aspect of Rio's past life, that being where his sword skill comes from. If there's something I will say, I feel like the inclusions of his past life are a little bit aggressive. Just they feel really jarring. And if I was, yeah, I think that that might be like one of like the weaker areas personally. Just it doesn't to me it doesn't mesh well. It's just like it feels like it's being shown there just to remind the viewers like, hey, yeah, obviously he's got this amazing ability because of his past life. When you look at the past life segments, I actually think the ones where he has conflict about his past life, like the one where he was like, no, I'm not that guy from Japan, I'm Rio now. I found that more interesting, although what caused it, that being the trigger event, him seeing people in the courtyard, that was again one of those heavy-handed, like not very good transition into the flashback. So if I was to say like my general feeling about that, I kind of wish that these things were, we went into them a little bit better. I mean, we have I think 3 segments, and I think the sword scene is probably the most well implemented, but this is a really minor gripe, and this is just an issue of execution. Totally subjective. Anyway, that sword scene is just showing off Rio's skill, and we have the justification to his inclusion in the exhibition match later. And also worth pointing out, the teacher noticed that Rio had something up with him, and so that actually built into the teacher being supportive during the exhibition match, which I thought was really good. We then see that Rio doesn't want to join the knight, which sets up another plot point for later in the episode. If you want to look at something really cool, this episode in particular was really good at setting up plot points to answer at the back end of the episode. That's really good. We then have Rio's flashback to Miharu, and we find out she never returned. So given the shenanigans happening in the opening, we already have we can already come up with some ideas about this. We get Rio's internal conflict about who he is, which I think is really worthwhile. I think this reincarnation mechanism has enough room for it to be explored, so I like that we have the conflict. And again, you know, the flashbacks themselves might be a little bit aggressive with how they're presented, but his reaction to the flashbacks, I think if every flashback had that kind of reaction that he has with the conflict, something that he's really taking away from this bit of information, I would have really enjoyed that. And I think we might get that in we'll probably get a nice mixed bag in the future. We then head into Rio's test prowess, where we have Rio being the top of the class and the princess defends Rio from a neutral point. The princess was really quiet for the majority of the episode. I'm interested to see like how this kind of develops, but the princess is still a dick. As Celia says, like, it doesn't really speak well on these people that they're so mean to him. And I'm glad actually, like the first episode, there is some level of awareness of what's going on here, and I really appreciate that, because people who aren't aware are the worst kind of anime characters. So Celia, I think, is still one of the shining beacons inside of this series. Anyway, after that, we have a nice moment between Celia and Rio where they acknowledge each other as friends, and this was clearly like a romance setup, especially when you go into the back half. Then we have the time skip, which was noted by everyone having deep voices. I'm not gonna lie, I missed the little subtitle that told us like 5 years had passed, and I thought, what the heck is going on here? Like, everyone just matured all of a sudden. But yeah, no man, it was good once I clued in. Anyway, it's good to know that in 5 years, not enough happened to get these people to chill out, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We then have another Celia and Rio scene where we find out what Rio wants to do, that is visit his parents' home country, and we find out it's at the border of the wilderness. We have Celia trying to get Rio to stay, which I thought was really cute in general. And then we have the whole thing about marriage age and all that stuff. We then go into the exhibition match, and the most noteworthy things here, we're seeing that the jerk from episode 1 got demoted. He deserved it. I'm actually really happy there were consequences here, because like that was one of my main points from the last episode. Really happy there's consequences. I hope he's fixed it since 5 years, but that's another point. Anyway, we have him blaming Rio for his own thing, and that kind of leads into the whole villainous moment. But before that, just wanted to again say it was cool when the teacher was directing Rio to a strike. It just made like little moments like that make you feel like, yeah, this guy is one of the good ones. We then have the villain scene where we learn the ambassador guy is the guy from the first episode, so this is just setting up stuff for Rio. It's unfortunate that we have to go through like a useful idiot kind of thing, but like villains are good at finding the useful idiots. And then we end off the episode with Rio getting a little love letter because someone got impressed with his ability. And then when you look at her face there, it's like this girl's realizing her feelings for Rio, and it's going to put her in a tough spot. So overall, when you look at the episode, and those are like the bullet points for my recap there, when you look at it, really, it's an episode that is quite centered on development, right? You have Rio and Celia's development as a little pairing here, which is mostly on Celia's side. One thing I will say is that Rio's a kind of creepy kid. Like, the way he's drawn, he just looks kind of creepy. He's just kind of giving me, like, not saying that he gives me bad vibes, but he looks like he would give me bad vibes. He's just like a creepy kid. Like, if he showed up all of a sudden, he had a knife in his hand, and he was going to stab someone, I'd be like, yeah, his face, the way he smiles, the way he talks when he's a child, yeah, it kind of gives me those vibes. But, going back to that, Rio and Celia, it's mostly Celia's side with Rio teasing her slightly. When I see him teasing her, honestly, I'm looking at it, this kid really is an old man in a kid's body. That's really how I'm interpreting that. But Celia's interactions there, I think, were cute in general, and all the tells that she had given were really good. I think that was ultimately really nicely done. On the other development side, we have like Rio's academic development, and we see how he goes with like going through being the best in the class. He has his sword thing, and then he gets to be at the exhibition match. The development on the class side was really good. Are there any other things? And then I guess like the goal development for Rio. We learned in this episode what he wants to do when he says he doesn't want to be a knight and that he wants to travel. So in terms of those forward moving developments, I think they were really good. And here you also had the villain getting involved. So the villain's going to hopefully have a plan at the end of the day. Given that he's an ambassador, it looks like it's just high politics and all that kind of stuff, which I'm all for. He looks really cool too. So I'm interested in seeing how much of an issue this guy's going to be. I really hope he doesn't act on Rio just because one random failure is saying that it's this kid's fault that his life was in the gutter, as if he didn't botch the first thing. Any hoosers. Development-wise, I think this was solid, and I think Celia was the cutest thing in the episode. I think the anime depicted her relatively well. I didn't have any issue being in any of her scenes. Her scenes were all adorable, but Celia also has a lot of goodwill from me in general. In terms of the nobles don't like Rio, The best thing about it is that Celia is pointing out that this is showing bad character on their part. And the best thing about it is that you have, at some points, people helping Rio for neutral reasons. Those were really worthwhile. I really respect that. I like the self-awareness. I would give that I think that's good. Let's see. If there was something to criticize, and this is unfortunate because of the way the technique works, but it's that 5-year time skip. The thing with the 5-year time skip is that you're telling me like nothing's changed in 5 years, that things have been static in 5 years, that there's been no big moment in Rio's life, right? Like, that's the odd thing. What happens to everyone's frustrations about Rio being at the top? What happened to that blonde girl and her wanting to be at the top? I would have liked to see where these frustrations led, because something like a test would have happened repeatedly over the 5 years. Buddy guy, the noble kid that's really annoying, he would have been shown up multiple times over the course of the 5 years. And again, this is a really dicey situation, because you understand what's happening in terms of the mechanism. The mechanism is there to like get Rio to an age where he can deal with more issues. It would be extremely unfair to criticize the mechanism, but because ultimately it's a time-saving device that's just it's just keeping the plot moving. But it gets kind of goofy when you have Celia and Rio talking, and you have a moment where Rio says, "Oh yeah, like you said the same thing 5 years ago." I don't know if I would have the ability to remember something I said 5 years ago in an exact same situation, especially because given the way that these two talk, they've probably have had these conversations making fun of Celia being short, because of the conversations that we see when the two of them are alone together in Celia's office. Her size, her youth, they come up so quickly and so repeatedly. There is no way logically that they have not had variations of this conversation on every anniversary, for instance, right? So this is unfortunate. Like, I wouldn't take away any points for this if I was grading this or anything. But this is just one of the places that you kind of gotta suspend disbelief and just accept this as a plot device, or like a plot movement device, just because the lines themselves are there to create the sense of continuity, but they are really goofy in practice. And when you look at the real-time development over the 5 years, like, honestly, nothing has changed except for people's voices getting deeper and people getting taller, but character-wise nothing has changed, and that's really insane. That shouldn't be the case. You really shouldn't be in a position where you're referencing an event for 5 years. It's quite literally, it gives the impression that the character stopped and then went 5 years as mindless drones and reactivated again at the 5-year mark. But again, I can't stress enough, this is just like an unfortunate side effect of trying to get through this story quickly. Now, if we were to get into a point of criticism, like, it would be a different conversation if, say, the source material covered the 5 years to some degree and had a different exit point when we get out of the 5-year time skip. Had that gone down that particular way, we would open the conversation to criticizing the anime's choices for doing things the way they did, because then we would be saying, like, maybe the anime also, like, screwed this up. But with light novels going through and I believe this one is a light novel, but going through a childhood period, jumping around in the time frame, that's kind of normal. Like, in terms of recent example, although I guess I was about to give a recent example of Mushoku Tensei, but Jobless Reincarnation might not be a good example, because Jobless Reincarnation spends way more time in the childhood era. But there are little time skips there. But when it comes to the reading of Jobless Reincarnation, they're really good at, like, showing you montages or giving you a rundown of what happened over the course of the years, and you can usually tell some kind of development has occurred there. But yeah, this was just an interesting point for the episode. We don't really get to talk about these kind of time jumps like this very often, so I really enjoyed bringing that point up there. At the end of the day, it's a discussion point, and I really can't find myself faulting the episode for having it, because this is just kind of, again, this is just kind of one of the things you have to make peace with when you're trying to go through this portion of a story, especially for an isekai. Like, when you look at this, what the story is doing is giving you a very quick glimpse at how this kid grew up and the big formative events in his history before we go into the era of him wearing all black and changing his hair color. Now, branching off from that, it just leads, like, one of the unfortunate points of the episode is just the nobles look even sillier because of it, though. Like, I find it really silly that Buddy Guy hasn't been humbled enough by this guy over the course of 5 years. Like, that's probably the most unbelievable thing. Now, in terms of other points here, like Rio himself, I'm interested in Rio's conflicts, but I'm not really interested in Rio's character. I like his interactions, but his character doesn't really get anything out of me. I remember that this kid wants to get revenge for his mom, but those undertones don't really show up in this episode. But right now, he's good as an insert character, with just the conflict over his past life being the interesting thing. I do hope Rio's probably going to be a character that's going to be characterized by how he feels about his past life, given that 2 episodes in, we're still kind of diving into that. I already talked about Celia. Celia is like a shining beacon here. I really hope that there is some kind of culmination to their little relationship. And then I guess the last thing is really the villain. The villain, I think, given that he's an ambassador, that already kind of just elevates the whole situation. He's manipulating the situation really well. I'm really hopeful for some cool stuff with this guy. But otherwise, I don't have any more big moments to talk about here. I think we covered, like, the most important things. Overall, yeah, man, still solid. I'm still having a really nice time. I'm finding little things to be surprised about, which I'm really happy. I think, like, maybe this might be a high tier isekai by the end of it, as long as it doesn't do anything stupid. And right now, it looks like it's a pretty robust piece of work. I don't find any spots here being overtly stupid. And when I mean stupid, I mean like on a critical writing level, not like on a character flaw level. So I'm excited. I'm invested. I want to see more. Guys, let me know what you thought down below. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.